First of all, I gotta apologize for looking like this. I got wet hair because I just come from swimming with a big-ass shark named Bruce. And if it weren't for my sister hopping in her bathing suit, that some bitch would have eaten me. Instead, he took off.
Folks, we had some practical jokers out there on the fake fence. And just a trick.
Shark!
That was a fake
The
fence.
shark!
You go in the cage. Cage goes in the water. You go in the water. Shark's in the water. Our shark. Now the shark that I am referring to is Jaws, and this is our second review in the month of October where we pay tribute each week throughout the entire month to a classic horror film. Thank you all so much for joining today. I really appreciate it. If you like these things, please subscribe, please like the video, share it with your friends, leave me a comment. I'm loving your support, guys. But let's dive in, no pun intended, to our discussion today. We're talking about Steven Spielberg's second film as a director, the first ever blockbuster film, 1975's Jaws. And I know a lot of you out there are going, dude, Jaws isn't a horror movie, and I'm here to tell you, yes, it most certainly is. Last week, we talked about Psycho, and Psycho was a game changer for many reasons, and one of those was people were terrified to take a shower after that movie. In a similar fashion, once this movie came out, people were terrified to go swimming, and 40 plus years later, they still are. The movie is based off a novel also titled Jaws, written by Peter Benchley. Mr. Benchley also has a cameo in the movie. But despite what a lot of people think, he claims his book was not based on the 1916 shark attacks off the Jersey Shore. Now, this is a real-life event that's very similar to the movie, where off the Jersey Shore, people were attacked by sharks or a shark. There's a lot of different theories as to was it one, was it multiple, but I highly encourage you to go research that if you haven't heard of it and if this is interesting to you. When I was very young and wanted to see this movie, my mother told me about her experience when she saw it in the theater. She went with one of her great friends, and she said right away when we first heard that music, and you know what music I'm talking about. You're very familiar with it. Mom said right then, the entire audience in the theater went, oh boy. And they all kind of looked at each other, and everyone knew something bad was about to happen. John Williams' score established a character of its own, and right away when you heard that music, you associated it with the shark. Now, Jaws went on to be a massive success. It is one of the highest grossing films of all time. It has spawned an entire fandom of shark lovers and enthusiasts. It's one of the all-time great films, no doubt. However, I want to say, as great as Steven Spielberg is, as much as he is praised, in my opinion, if he had had his way with making this movie, I don't think it would have been anywhere near as successful as it was. To his credit, Spielberg says the film would not have worked if he had had his way. And what I'm referring to is the fact that he wanted to show the shark throughout the entire film. And that, in my opinion, would not have been nearly as effective. Because, as the saying goes, it's not what you see that scares you, it's what you don't see. So what Spielberg had to do was get really creative and figure out a way to let the audience know, okay, the shark is present even though you don't see it. And one of my favorite examples of this is the holiday roast scene. This is where two islanders are trying to catch Jaws, and one of the guys, he steals his wife's 4th of July holiday roast, and they're out on this dock, And Jaws takes the bait, ends up breaking the dock apart, and one of these dudes is being pulled out to sea. But you don't see the shark. Instead, what you see is part of that dock. You see that wood slowly turn around, and John Williams' score kicks in. And then the shark comes right after that guy. And that is a heart-pounding scene. That's excellent filmmaking. You got the scare factor, you got the music, and you're on the edge of your seat as the audience. It's wonderful.
Can we go home now?
Another thing that makes this film stand out is the characters. All great actors and actresses playing these extremely memorable parts. And your main three of Roy Scheider, Robert Shaw, and Richard Dreyfuss, they knock it out of the park. All completely different personalities and backgrounds, and yet all three of them have to come together to defeat this shark. These characters are people that we love, we care about, we're rooting for, and it's fascinating to see how they work together and their different philosophies and their different styles and the tension and then the laughter, and it's really memorable. It's beautiful. And that is a key to making all these horror films and films in general great, is you have to care about your characters. As great as the script can be, if you don't like your characters, it's just not going to work. And this film accomplishes that so well. Now we're talking about all these great characters. Perhaps the most loved, certainly the most iconic at the time, was the late great Robert Shaw. He played Quint, and his performance absolutely stands out for a number of reasons. However, he was not Steven Spielberg's first choice. He wanted Lee Marvin to play the role, and it didn't work out. And thank God we got Robert Shaw, because he delivers one hell of a performance.
Mr. Mayor, Chief, ladies and gentlemen.
Steven Spielberg has even stated that his favorite part of this movie is probably the most famous scene, and that's when Robert Shaw, Quint, delivers his USS Indianapolis speech.
Japanese submarine slammed 2 torpedoes into our side, Chief.
And boys and girls, pay attention. When you watch that film, it's probably the creepiest part in the entire movie. And all it is a man talking, and then you add in some music to go with it.
1,100 men went into the water. Vessel went down in 12 minutes.
And the way he delivers it, it is so iconic, it is so creepy, it is terrifying. Not just in how he does it, but because this is actually a true story.
What we didn't know was our bomb mission had been so secret, no distress signal had been sent.
Steven Spielberg has even said, I believe it was his maid at the time, called him the weekend after the movie came out and told him, I'm not going to be able to come in today because I went and saw your new movie and I learned how my son died in World War II.
Shark comes the nearest man, that man he start pounding and hollering and screaming. Sometimes the shark would go away. Sometimes he wouldn't go away.
At the time, the Indianapolis story, it wasn't this mainstream, well-known thing. The movie Jaws popularized that. It is amazing as Robert Shaw's speech and how he delivered it was. You have to also give credit to John Milius. John Milius is famous for writing many speeches, the USS Indianapolis and Dirty Harry's Do You Feel Lucky monologue. He's gone on to direct films like Conan the Barbarian with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Red Dawn, and things like that. What he did is he came in and he wrote that entire speech. So you got to give him props for that. Robert Shaw looked at it and said, you know, there's just no way I can say all of this at once. So he edited it down to what you see in the movie.
You know the thing about a shark, he's got lifeless eyes, black eyes like a doll's eyes.
Now we're talking creepy, we're talking horror. This is my personal experience. The most terrified I have ever been watching a movie. Like, I literally thought, oh my God, I'm going to have a heart attack right now. It is the famous scene in Jaws where Richard Dreyfuss goes to check out Ben Gardner's boat. And I can remember watching that the whole time going, okay, the shark is in the water, the shark is going to eat him, and I'm looking for the frickin' shark. But no, a shark doesn't pop up. Instead, it's a head that pops out of the boat in the water. That scared me more than any scene ever has in a movie. I can remember being 9 years old, sitting at home at night. My dad's gone to bed, mom is out walking the dog, and I'm sitting there in the floor of the den just watching this scene, knowing something's going to happen. And when that head pops out of the boat, I can remember just freezing. And I had to turn away. I could not watch it. I was so terrified. And I literally thought my heart is going to explode and I'm going to die. So I wouldn't say Jaws is the scariest movie I've ever seen, but the head coming out of the boat is by far the most terrified I have ever been while watching a film. And if I'm being honest, anybody that I talk to about this movie, I always bring that scene up, and everyone said the first time they saw it, they had nightmares, they couldn't sleep alone, it just bothered them forever. And probably my favorite story I've ever heard in regards to that scene is by a former boss of mine. Now you gotta picture this in your mind. This dude's nickname was Bubba. Humongous fat guy. About 5'11", 6 feet, over 300 pounds for sure. Walking around like this. He had a laugh you could hear throughout the entire building. And sometimes it'd be anyway, he'd have tobacco in his mouth, spitting in the cup and all. But when we talked about that scene, he told me, oh man, I had to sleep with my parents for a whole week after I saw that scene. That scared me so much. So it's definitely had an impact. And there's so many other scenes throughout this entire film that are just terrifying. I mean, especially when you're seeing them for the first time in 1975. And one of the most brutal has to be the death of Quint. You got that shark dragging him around. He is screaming bloody murder, spitting blood up. That is a very graphic scene. So I'm going to rate Jaws a 9 out of 10. It is certainly one of the all-time greatest movies ever made. It is most definitely a horror film. It sets the bar extremely high in the world of suspense and terror, and it still continues to have an impact on people to this day. But I think what really makes it such a special film is the characters. You love and you care about them, and they all deliver such memorable performances. Guys, that's going to wrap this up. I've enjoyed it. I can't thank you enough for your support. Please continue to subscribe, comment, share these. I really enjoy hearing from you. We'll keep doing this. We'll be back next week with another classic horror film. In the meantime, stay out of the water.